I'm Phoebe Quinn, 30, and I've used crutches since a car accident left me with a spinal injury. That day at my dad's birthday BBQ in our Denver backyard, my world turned upside down. My sister grabbed my crutch mid-step screaming, "Stop faking it. Phoebe, you're just clinging to handouts." I crashed onto the grass, my face burning with shame, as relatives burst into laughter. A few cousins whipped out their phones recording my fall like it was a circus act. Their mocking eyes stung worse than the ground. I caught my sister's glare, that same suspicious squint I'd seen for years, one I never fully understood. My best friend, who's been by my side through every therapy session, stood frozen, her hand over her mouth. I wanted to scream to explain my condition, but the crowd's jeers drowned out my thoughts. The sting of betrayal hit hard, not just from my sister, but from everyone who laughed along. I'd faced doubts before, but never like this. Not in front of family, not so publicly. What hurt most was knowing someone was watching someone who knew the truth. And soon 6 words would flip this nightmare on its head, leaving everyone speechless. Have you ever been betrayed by family? Felt their judgment cut deeper than words? Drop a comment and share your story. I'd love to hear how you faced those moments. Stick around, because what happened next changed everything. The backyard buzzed with laughter and smoky grills. Kids darted between picnic tables, their squeals mixing with the sizzle of burgers. My sister stood in the center of the lawn, her voice slicing through the chatter like a knife. "Phoebe's faking her disability to mooch off mom and dad's money," she declared, pointing at me. "I'm the one stuck caring for them while she plays the victim." Her words hit like a slap, and heads turned, relatives murmuring. My aunt phone raised, recorded every second, her smirk barely hidden. My cousin Joanna, always quick to follow my sister's lead, let out a sharp laugh, egging her on. Another cousin, Andrew, chimed in. "I saw her walking at the clinic. No crutches, just holding the wall." My stomach twisted. Andrew had glimpsed me during a therapy session, struggling to balance for a few seconds, not walking. I opened my mouth to explain, my voice shaky. "That was physical therapy after my car accident 2 years ago. I can't walk without help." But my aunt cut me off, her tone dripping with scorn. "Don't lie to us, Phoebe." The crowd's eyes bored into me, some nodding, others whispering. I felt like a specimen under a microscope, every move judged. Mom stood near the drink table, her gaze fixed on the ground, as if avoiding me would keep the family's reputation intact. Dad, flipping burgers at the grill, didn't even look up, too busy pouring beer for a neighbor. Their silence stung more than the accusations. My best friend, standing beside me, squeezed my hand, her phone subtly angled to capture the scene. I tried to steady my breathing, but the weight of their distrust pressed down, isolating me in a sea of familiar faces. My sister paced, her voice louder now, recounting how my medical bills drained our parents' savings. "She's been milking this for years," she spat, gesturing wildly. Joanna clapped, as if it were a performance, while my aunt's camera stayed trained on me. I wanted to scream to make them see the truth, but my words felt trapped. Andrew doubled down, insisting she looked fine at the clinic, I swear. His certainty fueled the crowd's murmurs, and I caught a few relatives shaking their heads, their skepticism growing. I leaned on my remaining crutch, my knuckles white. "The accident crushed my spine," I said louder this time. "Therapy's the only reason I can stand at all." But my plea fell flat, drowned by Joanna's snicker and my aunt's muttered, "Sure, that's what she says." Mom's shoulders slumped further, her silence a wall between us. Dad laughed at something a guest said, oblivious to the storm brewing. My friend's grip tightened, her quiet strength the only thing keeping me grounded. The accusations kept coming, each one sharper than the last. My sister claimed I'd been scheming since the accident, that I'd chosen crutches to guilt our parents. Her words painted me as a con artist, not a daughter fighting to regain her life. Joanna's laughter rang out again, and Andrew nodded, repeating his story about the clinic. My aunt's phone never wavered, capturing my every flinch. I felt the crowd closing in their judgment, suffocating. I scanned the faces around me, searching for one ally, one person who believed me. Mom avoided my eyes, her need to keep the peace outweighing her role as my protector. Dad tossed another burger on the grill, his back to me. My friend whispered, "We'll fix this," her voice steady despite the chaos. I clung to her words, but the isolation was overwhelming, like being stranded in a room full of strangers. My sister's voice rose to a crescendo, demanding I admit to faking it. Her accusations echoed across the yard, drawing more eyes. I opened my mouth, ready to fight back, when a shadow moved at the edge of the crowd. Someone had been listening, someone who knew the truth. A calm presence stepped forward, ready to change everything. A voice cut through the crowd, calm but firm. Dr. Stephen Brooks. My dad's longtime friend and my physical therapist stepped forward, his presence commanding silence. He placed a hand on my sister's shoulder, his eyes steady. "She's not faking. I can prove it." He said, his 6 words slicing through the tension. The backyard moments ago, a cacophony of accusations, fell eerily quiet. Relatives froze their faces, a mix of shock and uncertainty. My aunt lowered her phone, her smirk gone. My cousin Joanna pressed a hand to her mouth, her earlier laughter silenced. Dr. Brooks pulled out his phone, his movements deliberate. "I record my patients' sessions to track progress," he explained, his voice even. "This is from Tuesday." He tapped the screen and a video played, showing me in his clinic struggling to shuffle with my crutches. My legs trembled, sweat beaded on my forehead, and each step was a battle. The crowd leaned in, eyes glued to the footage. The truth was undeniable, I wasn't pretending. Dr. Brooks glanced at the group. "If anyone doubts this, I'll provide her medical records." My sister's face paled, her bravado crumbling. "I was just trying to protect our family." She stammered, her voice barely audible. Her excuse rang hollow and no one responded. My aunt shifted uncomfortably, tucking her phone away. Joanna's eyes darted to the ground, her cheeks flushed. Andrew, who'd sworn he saw me walking, stood rigid, his certainty shattered. The crowd's shock was palpable, their earlier judgment replaced by a heavy, unspoken guilt. I stared at the video, a wave of relief washing over me. For years I'd fought to prove my condition, and now the truth was laid bare. But the relief was tinged with anger at my sister for leading this crusade, at my family for believing her so easily. Why had it taken a stranger's words to make them see? My best friend squeezed my hand, her grip fierce. "They'll pay for this," she whispered, her voice low but resolute. I nodded, my jaw tight, the fire in my chest growing. Dr. Brooks paused the video, his gaze sweeping the crowd. "Phoebe's injury is real," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Her spinal damage requires ongoing therapy. She's fought harder than any of you know." His words landed like a verdict, and the silence deepened. My aunt avoided my eyes, her earlier scorn replaced by unease. Joanna's hand dropped from her mouth, her expression unreadable. My sister tried to speak again, her words stumbling. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. I looked at Mom, hoping for some sign of support, but she stood frozen, her face a mask of shame. She'd stayed silent to keep the peace, and now that silence felt like a betrayal. Dad, still by the grill, glanced over, his brow furrowed, but he said nothing. Their inaction burned a reminder that I'd been alone in this fight. My best friend's whisper echoed in my mind, fueling my resolve. This wasn't just about proving them wrong, it was about justice. Dr. Brooks turned to me, his eyes kind but firm. "You don't have to stay here," he said softly. I nodded, gripping my crutch, the weight of the moment settling in. The crowd parted slightly, their faces a blur of regret and discomfort. My sister reached out her hand, trembling. "Phoebe, please," she started, but I shook my head, my voice steady. "You've said enough." Her hand fell and she stepped back, her eyes glistening. The video had changed everything, exposing not just my sister's cruelty, but the family's willingness to doubt me. I felt lighter, unburdened by their skepticism, but the anger lingered, sharp and unyielding. My best friend stayed close, her presence a quiet strength. I knew she'd captured every moment on her phone, evidence we'd need later. The crowd's silence followed me, their shock a stark contrast to their earlier jeers. Dr. Brooks gestured toward the gate, his voice low. "Let's get you out of here." I took a step, my crutch steady despite the uneven grass. My family's faces faded into the background, their judgment no longer my burden. I was ready to leave this behind. Dr. Brooks guided me toward his car, Naomi close behind. The gravel crunched under my crutches as Dr. Brooks led me away from the backyard, his steady hand hovering near my elbow. My best friend Naomi walked beside me, her eyes fierce with loyalty. "You don't need them?" she said, her voice soft but unyielding. The words anchored me, cutting through the chaos of the tiệc. Behind us, my sister's footsteps hurried across the grass. "Phoebe, wait," she called, her tone desperate. I paused, gripping my crutch, and turned to face her. Her face was flushed, her eyes wide. "I was only trying to help Mom and Dad," she said, her words rushed. "You know how much I've done for them." Her excuse felt like a dodge, a flimsy shield for her actions. I shook my head. My voice steadied despite the storm inside. "You're wrong, but it's not your fault." Her mouth opened, then closed, her hands falling limp. I turned away, the weight of her words fading as I moved toward the car. The crowd of relatives stood frozen, their earlier confidence replaced by discomfort. My Aunt Clara clutched her phone, the video she'd recorded still saved a silent threat. A few cousins averted their eyes, their faces tight with unease. Joanna and Andrew stood among them, silent, their earlier accusations now a distant echo. Dr. Brooks opened the car door, his expression calm but resolute. "We'll get you checked at the hospital," he said, his voice a quiet reassurance. I nodded, sliding into the back seat, Naomi settling beside me. As the car pulled away, I glanced back at the backyard. Mom stood by the drink table, her head bowed, more concerned with avoiding scandal than defending me. Dad, still at the grill, chatted with a neighbor, his laughter jarring against the tension. Their silence wasn't just neglect, it was a choice, one that cut deeper than my sister's words. The drive to the hospital was short, the city lights of Denver blurring past. Naomi leaned close, her voice low. "Clara didn't delete her video, but I've got my own," she said, patting her phone. "Every second of it." Her words sparked something in me, a resolve I hadn't felt before. My family had ignored the truth for too long, dismissing my struggle as a ploy. I couldn't let that continue. At the hospital, Dr. Brooks ran a quick check, confirming no new injuries from my fall. His kindness, so different from my family's indifference, steadied me. Sitting in the exam room, I pulled out my phone and searched for a lawyer. Naomi scrolled through her contacts, her brow furrowed. "I know someone," she said, tapping a name. "Lisa Donovan. She's fierce, specializes in disability rights." I dialed the number, my hands steady. When Lisa answered, her voice was sharp, professional. I explained the tiệc, my sister's accusations, and the video Naomi had captured. Lisa listened, her questions precise. "This is a clear case of harassment and defamation," she said. "We can file a civil suit for emotional and financial damages." I hung up, my decision made. "I'm doing this," I told Naomi, my voice firm. "I'm suing her." She nodded, her eyes gleaming with approval. "I'll be your witness," she said, her hand resting on mine. The choice felt right, a step toward reclaiming my dignity. My sister's actions weren't just a moment of anger, they were a pattern enabled by my family's refusal to see me. Mom's need to keep the peace had let years of doubt fester her silence, a tacit agreement with my sister's suspicions. Dad's carefree attitude, his focus on guests over me, was its own kind of dismissal. I thought back to the tiệc, to the faces of my relatives, their quickness to judge. Clara's video, still undeleted, was a reminder of their complicity. Joanna's laughter, Andrew's false story, they'd all played a part. But Naomi's video was my weapon, a record of the truth they'd tried to bury. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. This was about every moment I'd been doubted, every time my pain had been called a lie. "Doctor." Brooks returned, his clipboard in hand. "You're cleared to go," he said, his eyes kind. "But take it easy. I thanked him, my resolve hardening. Naomi helped me to the car, her presence a constant reminder that I wasn't alone. As we drove back into the night, I felt a shift inside me. The tiệc had exposed my family's flaws, but it had also ignited something new, a determination to hold them accountable. Lisa's words echoed in my mind: harassment, defamation, damages. They weren't just legal terms, they were a path to justice. My sister had crossed a line, and my parents had let her. I wasn't seeking revenge, but I needed them to understand the cost of their actions. Naomi glanced at me, her expression fierce. "We've got this," she said, her voice a promise. I nodded, my heart steady. The fight was just beginning. A few days later, police knocked on Sabrina's door. Detective Mark Peterson stood on the porch, his badge glinting in the Denver sunlight. He questioned my sister about the incident at the tiệc, citing charges of attacking a disabled person and spreading harmful falsehoods. The video Naomi had recorded, now in police hands, showed every detail: her accusations, my fall, the crowd's laughter. Peterson's voice was steady as he explained the seriousness of the allegations, his notebook filled with notes from our statements. My sister's face, Naomi later told me, was a mask of disbelief, her usual confidence replaced by a trembling silence. Back at my apartment, I met with Lisa Donovan, my lawyer. She'd filed a civil lawsuit against my sister seeking compensation for emotional distress and financial losses caused by her actions. "The video is airtight," Lisa said, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. "It proves intent and harm." I nodded, the weight of her words settling in. This wasn't just about money. It was about making my sister face the consequences of her cruelty. Lisa outlined the next steps: discovery, depositions, a possible court date. The process felt daunting, but I was ready to see it through. That evening, my phone buzzed with a call from Mom. Her voice was strained, almost pleading. "Don't sue your sister Phoebe," she said. "I'm scared this will tear our family apart." Her words stung, a reminder of all the times she'd stayed quiet, letting my sister's doubts fester to avoid conflict. I took a deep breath, my voice firm. "Mom, you chose peace over me for years. I can't keep pretending that's okay." She went silent, then hung up, her absence louder than any argument. Naomi came over later, bringing coffee and her unshakable support. Over steaming mugs, she shared her own story, a time when her family had judged her for choosing a career over tradition, calling her selfish. "It hurts, but you learn to stand tall," she said, her eyes steady. "You're doing that now." Her words bolstered me, a reminder that strength wasn't about ignoring pain, but facing it head on. I thanked her, my resolve growing. She'd already agreed to testify, her video the cornerstone of our case. My phone pinged with messages from my Aunt Clara and my cousin Andrew, both asking how I was doing. Their texts were polite, cautious, but lacked any real accountability. I left them unread, unwilling to engage with half-hearted gestures. Instead, I threw myself into physical therapy, pushing through exercises with a focus I hadn't felt before. Each step, each stretch was a reclaiming of my body, a defiance of the doubts that had haunted me. Dr. Brooks noticed, his quiet nod a small victory. In the quiet of my evenings, I started a blog. At first, it was just a way to process the tiệc, to put words to the sting of being misunderstood by my own family. I wrote about the moment I fell, not with shame, but with clarity, how it exposed the fragility of trust. I described the weight of Mom's silence, Dad's indifference, the crowd's quickness to judge. The words poured out raw and unfiltered, each post a step toward healing. I didn't expect anyone to read it, but it felt like shedding a burden I'd carried too long. The blog became my refuge, a space where I could be honest without fear. I wrote about the lawsuit, not in detail, but as a choice to stand up for myself. I shared the exhaustion of therapy, the small triumphs of progress, the ache of family ties fraying. Each entry felt like a stitch mending the parts of me that had been torn. Naomi read my posts, her comments full of encouragement. "You're turning pain into power," she wrote, and I clung to that idea, letting it guide me. My sister's investigation continued, Peterson calling me with updates. He'd interviewed witnesses from the tiệc, their accounts aligning with Naomi's video. Lisa prepared documents, her confidence a steady anchor. I kept my focus on therapy and writing the blog, growing into a ritual of release. My family's messages, Clara's, Andrew's, even Mom's, faded into the background, their words too little, too late. I wasn't angry anymore, not like before. Instead, I felt a quiet strength, a certainty that I was on the right path. The lawsuit wasn't just about my sister. It was about every time I'd been dismissed, every doubt I'd had to disprove. Writing the blog helped me see that turning my story into something bigger than myself. I began to feel whole again, not because of my family, but in spite of them. Naomi's story, her unwavering presence, reminded me I wasn't alone. The world was about to see the truth. The video hit social media like wildfire. Naomi's footage spread across platforms, racking up thousands of shares within days. Hashtags about disability rights trended, with comments condemning the cruelty captured on screen. My sister's life unraveled fastest. Her bank, citing reputational damage, terminated her employment, unwilling to associate with someone now infamous for her actions. Friends who once filled her social calendar distanced themselves, their texts and calls drying up. The online backlash was relentless, painting her as a symbol of ignorance. My Aunt Clara faced her own reckoning. Commenters zeroed in on her laughter in the video, calling her complicity heartless. Her social media accounts, once full of family photos, went private, but the criticism followed her, seeping into her community circles. My cousin Joanna, who'd cheered my sister on, sent me a letter, her handwriting shaky. I was wrong to join in, she wrote, admitting she'd been swept up in the moment. I hope you can forgive me. Her words were sincere, but I wasn't ready to respond. The wound was still fresh, and trust once broken didn't mend easily. I declined every reporter who called, their voicemails piling up with requests for interviews. The spotlight wasn't what I wanted. Instead, I poured my energy into my blog, crafting posts about living with a disability in a world quick to judge. I wrote about the small victories, managing a new therapy exercise, navigating a world not built for crutches, and the larger battles like facing family who doubted my truth. The blog wasn't just for me anymore. It was a voice for others who'd been dismissed. At my next therapy session, Dr. Brooks greeted me with a rare smile. "You're stronger than ever," he said, noting how my balance had improved. His praise felt like a milestone, proof that my focus was paying off. Each session was a step toward reclaiming my body, a quiet defiance of the skepticism I'd endured. The physical progress mirrored the clarity I found in writing each post, sharpening my sense of purpose. Readers began finding my blog, their comments flooding in. A woman with chronic pain thanked me for describing the exhaustion of proving her condition. A man using a wheelchair shared how his own family had questioned his needs. Their words hit deep, reminding me I wasn't alone. Strangers became a community, their stories weaving into mine. One reader called me a voice for the invisible, and the phrase stuck, fueling my drive to keep writing. The blog's reach grew, each post shared by those who saw themselves in my words. The attention was humbling, but it didn't erase the distance between me and my family. Mom's call still echoed, her plea to protect my sister, a reminder of her priorities. Dad's silence, his focus on tiệc guests, felt like a wall I couldn't breach. Even Joanna's letter, though honest, couldn't undo the years of doubt. I didn't hate them, but I wasn't ready to rebuild what they'd broken. My purpose now lay elsewhere, in the readers who found strength in my story, in the therapy sessions that pushed me forward. Naomi, ever my anchor, kept me grounded. She'd check in, bringing takeout and stories to lighten my mood. "You're building something real," she said one night, scrolling through my blog's comments. Her belief in me was unshakable, a contrast to the family who'd faltered. She'd faced her own battles, she reminded me, and come out stronger. Her words were a guide, urging me to keep going. The lawsuit moved forward, Lisa Donovan updating me with crisp emails. Detective Mark Peterson's investigation had gathered enough evidence to support the charges, and the civil case gained traction. But the legal fight felt secondary to the blog, which had become my true battleground. Writing wasn't just healing, it was power, a way to reshape the narrative my sister had tried to control. Each post was a declaration that my voice mattered, that my disability wasn't a lie. The online storm showed no signs of slowing. Sabrina's name became a cautionary tale, a warning against judging what you don't understand. Clara's reputation took a hit, her laughter a mark she couldn't erase. Joanna's letter sat unanswered on my desk, a decision I'd face later. For now, I wrote, I moved, I grew. The blog gave me a purpose I hadn't expected, a way to turn pain into connection. I was no longer defined by my family's doubts. Months later, I saw Sabrina at the therapy clinic. The familiar hum of exercise machines filled the air as I adjusted my crutches, preparing for my session. My sister stood near the reception desk wearing a volunteer badge, her hair pulled back tightly. Our eyes met, and for a moment the room seemed to shrink. She approached her steps, hesitant, her voice low. I'm trying to understand what you go through, she said, gesturing to the clinic. The pain, the work. Her words hung between us, earnest but heavy, as if she expected them to bridge the gap she'd created. I steadied myself, my grip firm on my crutch. That's good, I said, my tone even, but it's not about you. Without waiting for her response, I turned toward the therapy room, my focus already shifting to the exercises ahead. I didn't look back, the weight of her presence fading with each step. Naomi, who'd come with me, caught up, her eyes bright with approval. You handled that perfectly, she said, her voice warm. Her support was a quiet strength, a reminder that I didn't need my sister's validation to move forward. In the therapy room, I pushed through my routine, each movement a testament to my resilience. My blog had become a lifeline, its words connecting me to others who understood my journey. Emails from readers, people with disabilities, chronic illnesses, invisible struggles poured in daily. A young woman wrote about hiding her condition to avoid judgment. A veteran shared how my posts gave him courage to speak up. Their stories wove into mine, creating a tapestry of shared strength. I wasn't alone anymore, not in the way I'd once been, surrounded by family yet unseen. Back at my apartment, I found a text from Mom. How's your health, sweetheart? It read, her tone soft but distant. I stared at the screen, the message a faint echo of connection. She hadn't pushed me to drop the lawsuit again, but her silence during those years of doubt still lingered. I set the phone down, leaving the text unanswered. Keeping my distance wasn't anger, it was clarity, a choice to protect the life I was building. My family's absence no longer defined me. My readers, my writing, my progress did. Dr. Brooks noticed the change during our sessions. You're carrying yourself with confidence, he said one afternoon, watching me navigate a new balance exercise. His words weren't just about my body, they reflected the certainty I'd found in my voice. The blog had given me a platform where my truth didn't need defending. I wrote about the clinic, not mentioning my sister, but focusing on the grind of recovery, the small triumphs of each day. Readers responded, their comments a chorus of encouragement, urging me to keep going. Naomi often joined me at the clinic, her presence a steady comfort. Over coffee, after one session, she grinned, scrolling through my latest post. You're unstoppable, she said, her pride evident. She'd been there through every step, from the tiệc to the lawsuit, never wavering. Her belief in me mirrored the support I found online, a community that saw me for who I was, not what my family assumed. The lawsuit, still ongoing, felt like background noise now. Lisa Donovan sent updates, her emails detailing depositions and evidence, but my focus stayed on writing and therapy. The blog grew steadily, its reach expanding beyond what I'd imagined. A reader from Chicago invited me to a disability advocacy group. Another sent a handwritten letter thanking me for making her feel seen. Each message was a spark fueling my drive to keep sharing. I didn't need my sister's understanding or Mom's tentative texts to feel whole. My confidence came from within, built on the words I wrote and the people who read them. The clinic, once a place of struggle, became a symbol of my strength, each session proof that I was moving forward. Sabrina's volunteering didn't change that. Her attempt to connect felt like too little, too late, a gesture that couldn't erase the past. I didn't wish her ill, but I didn't owe her my time. Mom's message sat unanswered, a reminder that some bridges stayed broken not out of spite, but necessity. My life was full therapy writing readers, Naomi. I was enough not because of my family, but because of the path I'd carved. The world had opened up, and I was ready for what came next. A year later, my blog won a community award. The Denver Disability Alliance honored my writing for raising awareness, their citation praising its raw honesty and impact. I stood in a small auditorium clutching a glass plaque, the weight of it grounding me. The applause from advocates and allies felt like a warm embrace, a stark contrast to the silence I'd once faced from family. My journey, once marked by doubt and dismissal, had led me here to a moment of recognition that wasn't just mine, but shared with every reader who'd found strength in my words. Back at my apartment, my phone rang. Mom's voice came through, tentative but earnest. "I want to make things right." "Not make excuses," she said, her words careful. "Come to a family tiệc, please. We miss you." I paused, the invitation stirring memories of judgment-filled gatherings. Joanna had apologized, her letter joined by a few cousins who'd reached out, their regret clear. But the rest, my sister, my Aunt Clara, most of the family remained silent, their absence louder than any gesture. "I need peace, not tiệc filled with judgment," I replied, my voice steady. Mom didn't argue, her sigh heavy before she hung up. I turned back to my laptop, the blog open on the screen. Writing had become my refuge, a space to advocate for disability rights and share the truths others overlooked. I posted about the award not to boast, but to celebrate the community that had lifted me, readers, advocates, strangers who'd become allies. Their comments flooded, in each one a reminder that my voice mattered. A teenager with cerebral palsy wrote that my posts helped her face her classmates' stares. An older man shared how my words pushed him to demand better accessibility. Their stories fueled my resolve, a fire that burned brighter than any family tiệc could. The freedom of living authentically was new, exhilarating. I no longer carried the burden of proving myself to those who doubted me. My sister's accusations, once a sharp wound, had faded into a distant ache. Her attempt to understand at the clinic hadn't changed my path. It had only clarified it. Mom's call. Joanna's letter. They were steps, but not enough to pull me back into a world that had dismissed me for so long. I was stronger for it, not because I'd forgiven, but because I'd chosen myself. Physical therapy remained a cornerstone, each session a quiet victory. Dr. Brooks, ever steady, remarked on my progress, noting how my movements carried a new ease. The blog and therapy were intertwined, both spaces where I rebuilt myself piece by piece. Writing gave me clarity. Therapy gave me strength. Together, they'd carried me through the wreckage of family ties into a life where I defined my worth. Reflecting on my journey, I saw the cost of those toxic bonds. The tiệc where I fell, the accusations, the silence, they'd been heavy, but they'd also been a catalyst. Cutting those ties hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. I'd once thought family was everything, that their approval was my anchor. Now I knew better. My strength came from within, from the community I'd found, from the truth I'd claimed. I was free not because I'd won their acceptance, but because I no longer needed it. The award sat on my shelf, a symbol of what I'd built. But the real victory was the life I lived now, one of purpose, advocacy, and unapologetic truth. I kept writing, each post a step forward, each reader a connection that made the world feel less lonely. Naomi, my constant, celebrated with me, her laughter a reminder of the bonds that mattered. The lawsuit had faded, its outcome less important than the voice I'd found. Looking back, I realized the lesson wasn't just mine, it was for anyone who'd been doubted, dismissed, or forced to prove their worth. "Your truth is enough," I wrote in my final post of the year. You don't need to carry the weight of others' skepticism. Find your voice, build your community, and let go of what holds you back. Strength isn't in staying, it's in choosing yourself. That was the heart of my story, not a tale of revenge, but of resilience, of finding freedom in letting go. I closed my laptop, the screen dark, my heart light. The world was mine to shape, and I was ready.